Hi there. Now, instead of the usual nudge to get back to a piano routine that I do at this time of the year, here's something a little bit different and I hope much more practical. So I encourage you to listen in to the points that are going to be made here and apply them to yourself as they arise. And if there's even only one thing that makes sense to you here, that's fab. I'd love to know what that is and do let me know in the comments. But first, what is practice? Think about your own opinions about this as we look on. Now, an overview of practice is that it's what a practitioner does when doing whatever it is they do. Now, homing in a bit more specifically on this is basically trying to improve your skills. Musicians do it, of course, but so do sportsmen and women, surgeons, artists, teachers, electricians, and actually any occupation where skills can be improved. Now, having something to aim for is really important because if you don't, you'll find yourself losing direction and focus. Now, I love this next one. Having a beginner's mind. This means that your learning cup is always half full and there is always room for new things. And the fabulous thing about this is that you become richer and more knowledgeable all the time. That is, of course, if you see learning as a valuable pastime. Now, if you think it's going to be easy and success is just going to happen, you're just kidding yourself and you'll give up too easily when the going gets tough. So prepare yourself to rise to the challenges instead, and you'll be much stronger for it. Now, do you recognise any of these features, or do any of these ideas stand out as things that you yourself could use to reframe your piano practice approach? So why practice? Well, in a way, the previous slide covers this, but we practice because we have a goal in mind. This might be a big thing like a concert or an exam, or it might be just to be able to relax with a piece of music that you enjoy with as much flow as you are capable of. Now, it's really important to find a way to juggle between moving things on and not losing what you have already achieved. So touching base with your progress every few days at least is vital, so you're not having to relearn things all over again. So I like to think of practice as what we do to fix a diagnosed problem. So if you look at it as a problem and a cause, something causes the problem, and if you can figure out the cause, then you're already most of the way to fixing it. It's great when that happens, and it's often not what you think. So before I move on, have a think about your own piano practice. Do you actually practice, or do you play the piano? Playing the piano is fine, of course it is, and that's the most enjoyable aspect of what we do. Now, your teacher probably gives you practice notes, and this forms what your practice should be. But without a teacher guiding you, you're more likely to play the piano. And that is fine. But to improve, you do need to sometimes be a practitioner as well. So let's move on. So here we are, how to practice. Tip number 1. Chunking. So this is a useful thing for any stage in developing a piece of music. But initially, this is where you start off by chunking your music into workable sections. Facing a brand new piece of music, however intricate it is, can be rather overwhelming. But if you prepare to work on chunks, that could be sections, phrases, bars, or whatever works best for you, you are paving the way for a much easier time of it. The obvious thing about chunking is that it creates simple reference points. Bar numbers can be so time-consuming, and actually some music doesn't include them at all. And this is the best thing about chunking. But also, sadly, the most ignored. If we are serious about our practice, we shouldn't be practicing from the start of our music every time. We should be focusing in on the bits that need our attention, hence the balance pictures here. It's a balancing out of more quality and less quantity. Another way to visualise a balance is one where each bit of the music you are learning should have an equal amount of time of practice dedicated to it over time. But this is impossible unless you are learning a whole piece in one go and can do that each and every practice. See, what happens is this. Your first musical chunk gets really fluent. The second chunk is a bit less well known. The third chunk is even less well known. I'm sure you get the idea. You apply some logic to the scenario. So pay less attention to what you already know you can do well. And actually this leads nicely on to the fact that chunking makes efficient use of your time. How to practice tip number 2. I call this the shopping list. This technique is especially useful if you have a new piece of music or if you are getting to grips with an awkward passage. So imagine shopping from a shopping list and literally ticking things off one by one down the list. You're focusing in on each item you need until you have it in your basket and you've ticked it off. This is a good way to stop the jumble of other information that's there in the music from distracting you. And obviously, depending on your ability to sight read, we are talking about a speeded up kind of shopping list here. Each item makes it to the basket in a fraction of the time as it would in a real shopping trip. But the key here is to mentally tick it off and move on to the next. And do this over time until you have a good flow. And here are the benefits. Tiny steps is making progress towards being able to move in bigger steps, and it's user-friendly. This method causes a natural avoidance of bad habits. The progress you will make will be easier and quicker because you won't be having to go over old stuff to fix things. The music will come together with much better quality. And there it is again, quality over quantity. How to practice tip number 3. I call this book on head. Yes, my students and I, we always have a bit of a giggle with this one. And you don't need to have the huge pile of books this lady has on her head. One thin floppy paperback novel or maybe a membership booklet is perfect. Try to keep it on your head whilst you play a bit of music you've been working on. This is a great way to check in with your progress made. If you have made strides towards improving something, and then one day you're struggling with something that was going really well previously, check in with your state of relaxation and balance a book on your head to try the music out. You may be surprised. So here are some more things that it does for you. It improves your playing posture and forces you into a good playing connection as you have to concentrate twice as hard. It removes some of the musical overthinking you might have fallen into, which diverts your brain away from that. And this next one's really fab. By adding an element of difficulty, by playing with a book on your head, and you try to get good at the passage you're working on with that book on your head, you can guarantee you've mastered it with the book off your head. And of course, it's funny. We all like a good laugh, especially when someone sees you so seriously going at your practice with a book on your head. Now you can explain that it was a very important skill and one day you hope to support way more than a book for your piano acrobatic act. It makes me think about the Cat in the Hat. I don't know about you. And finally, just a few more little things. A little bit of practice most days is much better than 1 or 2 longer practices each week. Remember, keep things bite-size. Be aware of tension around your back, shoulders, neck, and head. Get into the practice of adding in some mini body scans on a regular basis. Notice negative feelings of impatience or boredom. The two of these are very interlinked and on the opposite sides of the same coin, because impatience leads to rushing your progress. So then you try to keep things slow and good quality, and then boredom can set in. It seems like a lose-lose. So this is why it's a good idea to mix things up and be prepared to do something different in a different practice that you might be doing. You might start to learn a new chunk. You might play around with balance when you're practicing. Put a book on your head. Whatever you do, keep the quality. And above all, this covers it all really. Keep remembering why you are a piano practitioner.